snap chain. Music died mid-note. Laughter collapsed into silence. Even the hum of engines outside seemed to hesitate, as if the night itself was listening. Ellie's hair in unease, darkening his collar, dripping on the concrete floor in a steady, nervous rhythm. Mixed with the rain was blood thin, rust-colored streaks sliding from his eyebrow that had already swollen nearly shut. One eye was purple and closing fast. His knuckles were scraped raw. One shoe was missing, socks soaked through and gray with grime. He didn't look at the net. That was the strangest part. Most people froze when they stepped inside this place. Most people stared at the leather vest stitched with old symbol at the scars that tattooed. The heavy boots planted wide like roots. Eli didn't do any of that. His gaze stayed low, locked on a small girl pressed against his side. She couldn't have been more than 6, barefoot, pajama pants patterned with faded stars. Her face was buried in Ellie's chest, fingers fisted in the fabric of his hoodie like she was afraid the world might pull him away if let go. She smelled faintly of shampoo and rain. Her breathing was shallow, uneven, half asleep, half terrified. Ellie's arm was wrapped around her so tightly his shoulder trembled. 9 bikers stared back at him. Some leaned against the pool table. One sat frozen mid-shuffle of cards. Another had his hand still wrapped around a beer bottle, knuckles white. The air was thick with smoke, oil, and something metallic, cold anger. Maybe the kind of place where mistakes didn't get second chances. A man near the back scoffed under his breath. This seemed a shelter. Eli flinched just slightly, but he didn't step back, didn't move an inch closer to the door. Instead, he took a breath that sounded like it hurt. Then he spoke. Please, he whispered. His voice cracked on the words, splintering under the weight of everything he hadn't said yet. Can you hide my sister for one night? The words landed wrong, too soft for a room built on noise, too fragile for a place where rules were enforced with fists. For a moment, no one reacted at all. It was as if the sentence didn't belong anywhere. It had just been spoken. Hide. The word echoed. Not help. Not watch. Hide. The girl shifted against him, murmuring something too quiet to hear. Ellie's hand slid up to cradle the back of her head automatically. Fingers gentle despite how badly they shook. A chair scraped faintly as someone adjusted their weight. Another biker exhaled slowly through his nose. Somewhere, water dripped from Ellie's sleeve onto the floor. Each drop loud in the silence. No one asked what he meant by hide. No one asked who he was hiding her from, because something in the way Eli stood there bloody, so barefoot, refusing to look away from the child clinging to him, already answered every question that mattered. And in that suspended moment, before anyone spoke, before anyone decided what kind of night this was going to become, the entire room understood one thing with sudden, uncomfortable clarity. Whatever had chased this boy to their door, it hadn't stopped chasing him yet. This was a place where knuckles solved problems before words ever could. The clubhouse breathed like a living thing, slow, heavy, dangerous. Engines outside ticked and cool, metal contracting with sharp little pops that sounded too much like bones settling back into place. A pool ball cracked against another, the sound snapping through the room like a warning shot. Somewhere, a radio hissed low, then fell silent when someone turned the knob without looking. Cigarette smoke hung thick in the air, layered and stale, clinging to the walls like it had soaked in over decades and refused to leave. It burned Ellie's already watering eye. But he didn't blink. He didn't move. He stood exactly where he was, like the floor might disappear if he trusted it too much. Kids didn't belong here. Everyone in the room knew it. Eli knew it too, especially kids like him, too thin, shoulders pulled in, body angled just slightly sideways like he was already bracing for impact. His eyes moved constantly, not darting wildly, but tracking exits, hands, shadow, the look of someone who measured distance instinctively, someone who learned to read rooms faster than words could ever help. The girl against his chest shifted again, her small fingers tightening in his hoodie. Eli adjusted his grip without thinking, placing himself between her and the room in a way that felt practiced, protective, final. There were 9 bikers watching him. Each one looked different, but the weight they carried felt the same: leather vests stitched with patches that meant something, boots planted wide, bodies relaxed in a way that suggested they didn't need to rush. These were men who knew exactly how much space they took up and how to use it. The silence between them pressed in harder than the noise ever had. At the head of the long wooden table sat Marcus Grave Holloway. He didn't stand. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Grave leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking under his weight. His beard was gray and thick, his hair pulled back tight. A scar cut down his cheek, pale and smooth, like it had been there long enough to stop hurting, but not long enough to be forgotten. His eyes were sharp, clear, steady, stripping things down to what they really were. They settled on Eli. Grave studied him the way a man studies a locked door, not rushing, not guessing, just taking inventory. Then he spoke. "Midnight's a bad time to knock on our door, kid." His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It carried anyway, calm and edged like a blade laid flat on a table. The words hung there. Eli swallowed. You could see it happen, the tight movement of his throat, the way his jaw clenched, as if he were holding something back. For half a second, it looked like he might apologize, like he might turn around and grab for the handle behind him. But he didn't. He didn't step back, didn't lower his eyes, didn't loosen his grip on the girl. Instead, he straightened just enough to be seen, just enough to say, "I'm still here." Water dripped from his sleeve onto the concrete floor. One drop, then another. The sound echoed loudly in the quiet. A biker near the pool table shifted his stance. Another crossed his arm. Someone muttered something under their breath that Eli didn't hear, but he felt it. The room tightened, a slow coil winding inward. Grave tilted his head slightly, eyes narrowing not with anger, but with interest. Most people broke by now. Most people explained themselves. Eli stayed silent. And in that silence, the contrast became impossible to ignore. A boy barely holding himself together, standing in the middle of a room built to tear people apart. The question wasn't whether he belonged there. It was whether the room was about to remind him violently of that fact. Grave eyes flicked to the girl first. 6 years old, barefoot, pajama, pants tangled around her ankles like vines. She was standing there, pressed against Ellie's side, eyes half closed, asleep while the world held its breath. Her small face was pale in the dim light, lips parted, breathing uneven. Every little twitch of her fingers against Ellie's hoodie made him flinch, like he could feel the weight of the danger pressing in from all sides. Then Graves' gaze shifted slowly to Ellie's face. The blood and bruises hadn't softened the defiance in his eyes. They were wide, alert, but hiding something else, something older than his 14-year fear, yes, but tempered with a determination that made the room lean in quietly, even without realizing it. "Who did that to you?" Grave asked gently. Eli shrugged, the motion slight, almost dismissive. "Kids who've learned not to trust adults always do that. They don't answer questions direct. They don't let themselves be read. They learn early that words can hurt as much as fists, sometimes more." Walked into a door. Eli muttered. The words were flat, empty, not quite a lie, but not the truth either. Just what he had been taught to say when adults asked questions they didn't need answers for. A pause fell over the room. Not heavy, not threatening, just waiting. No one laughed. No one snorted derisive. No one made a move. The room seemed to shrink, the air thickening, leaning toward him. Grave crouched slowly, settling himself so that his eyes met Ellie's directly. The height difference vanished. The leather and tattoos didn't matter anymore. Only the boy, only the small girl pressed against him. "Try again," Grave said, calm but insistent. Eli clenched his jaw so hard it cracked faint. His hands shook, not from fear alone, but from holding back a storm he'd been carrying along. He swallowed. Something wet ran down the side of his face. Whether blood or rain, he didn't care to notice. "She cries when he drinks, he said quietly, voice so low it could have been mistaken for thought. And tonight he didn't stop. The words fell clumsily, raw, almost too adult for his small frame, to practice, to sharp edge, and yet somehow entirely truthful. Every syllable carried years of watching, waiting, and surviving. Grave nodded slightly, encouraged, silent. He let the pause stretch, letting Eli fight with the words he had hidden inside. Our dad died last year. Eli continued faster now, almost as if the act of speaking them gave him permission to keep going. Mom tried, then she stopped trying. His voice hitched. Tonight mattered because he broke off, breath catching, his chest heaving under the weight of holding both the girl and his own story. Because he said next time he would miss her. He finished, the words barely audible, like a secret too terrible to say aloud. The room didn't feel loud anymore. It didn't feel like a clubhouse full of tough men. Not in that moment. It felt dangerous in a different way, a quiet, simmering danger born not from fists or threats, but from truth. The men around him didn't move. No one laughed. No one spoke. Even the faint tap of water from Ellie's dripping sleeve sounded distant. Grave leaned just slightly, still proud. His face softened, but his eyes remained sharp, watching, reading. He let Eli feel the weight of being seen, not judged, not dismissed, but truly seen. And for the first time in a long time, Eli allowed himself a moment to breathe, to hope, to let the enormity of the night, the blood, the rain, the fear exist outside of his chest, not inside it. The girl stirred, nudging against him, and he tightened his grip, but the tremor in his hands was a little less, because for the first time, the world wasn't just threatening anymore. Someone in it might actually help. Someone might actually be able to stop the next time from coming. Someone slid an ice pack across the table. It landed with a soft thunk, wobbling slightly before coming to rest against Ellie's bruised eyebrow. He didn't reach for it immediately, hesitated, like touching it might break the fragile hold on the moment. Then he did, cautiously, pressing it against the swelling, trying not to wince. The cold was sharp and honest, and for a fleeting second, it reminded him of the world outside the clubhouse, a world that could hurt and heal all at once. Another biker draped his jacket over the girl without being asked. The leather smelled faintly of motor oil and tobacco, but warm. She pressed against it instinctively, nuzzling her small face into the fold. Ellie's fingers twitched as he smoothed the fabric over her shoulder, trying to convey comfort with a touch that barely kept from trembling. The room shifted subtly. 9 men, each one a tower of muscle, history, and scars, had been watching for minutes, silent and unreadable. And now the air began to change. Not loud, not theatrical, but almost imperceptibly. A man near the door muttered, "We can't keep them. This isn't our mess." The words were flat, matter of fact, almost professional in tone, but in the quiet tension, they rang like a bell. Some of the others stiffened, some looked away, some stared at Eli, like they were weighing the weight of the boy against the weight of the law. Grave stood. The chair creaked under his movement. The room went still again, like every sound had been absorbed and held by the wall. He didn't shout. He didn't glare. He didn't even raise a hand. He just stood, and in that single motion, everything shifted. This wasn't about rules anymore. It wasn't about boundaries, contracts, or even what was legal. It was about what kind of men they were going to be. Grave walked slowly toward Eli, each step measured, deliberate, a quiet declaration. The other bikers watched him like he was an entire night turn. He stopped just short of Ellie's trembling form and looked down at him, gray eyes scanning the boy's bruised face, blood-streaked hair, and there, as though the world might snatch her away if he let go for even a second. One night, Grave said, his voice low but resolute, "You don't leave my side. Your sister sleeps tomorrow. We do this right." Eli nodded. It was almost imperceptible, but the gesture was heavy with everything he had been carrying. Not a word, not a question, not a doubt, just a nod, as if saying, "I'm out of options, but I will trust you for now." Another biker muttered under his breath, "Soft enough not to carry far. This is going to get messy." Grave didn't respond. He didn't need to. His eyes swept the room once, landing briefly on each man, and in that silent sweep, each of them made a choice. Some helped move chairs aside so Eli and his sister could sit. Some began quietly cleaning up the remnants of the night spilled drinks, broken glasses, the sharp edges of a pool cue.
यहाँ पे मैं आपको एक चीज क्लियर करता चलूं कि मेरा अपना जो ओन मेथड है, किस तरह से मैं चेक करता हूँ कि यार चैनल शैडो बैन है या नहीं है, वो भी मैं आपको आज इस वीडियो के अंदर बताऊंगा। और साथ
explanations. They were all silently declaring who they were, what they would do, when the rules didn't
मैं
matter,
आपको
when the
ये भी
right
बताऊंगा कि
thing didn't come with
आपको
a handbook.
किस तरह से चेक करना है कि आपने किस तरह से चेक करना है कि आपका शॉर्ट का चैनल या लॉन्ग वीडियो का चैनल शैडो बैन तो नहीं है। अगर शैडो बैन है चैनल के ऊपर वीडियो जितनी मर्जी डालोगे, भले आप मिस्टर बीस्ट की वीडियो भी डाल दो उस चैनल के ऊपर, वो चैनल कभी भी ग्रो नहीं हो सकता, क्योंकि यूट्यूब आपकी वीडियो का इंप्रेशन ही किसी को नहीं देता। आपके शॉर्ट को शॉर्ट्स फीड के अंदर दिखाते ही नहीं है, तो आपके शॉर्ट्स भी बैन नहीं होते। ठीक हो गया?
Human. Finally, Grave nodded once, and Eli felt, for the first time that night, the tiniest spark of something dangerous and foreign. Hope. The girl yawned and leaned against him. Eli tightened his grip around her, but less like a shield now and more like someone finally allowed to breathe. One night, that was all Grave promised. But in those words, the boy could feel the world shifting under his feet, and for the first time, he didn't feel entirely alone. Morning came slow and gray. Rain had turned the streets to slick ribbons of silver. The world outside the club
वीडियो उठा के YouTube के ऊपर डालते हो, ठीक है, एक बार आपने डाली, दो बार डाली, तीन बार डाली, आपका चैनल शैडो बैन हो जाता है। कॉपीराइट वीडियो से मुराद कि आपने YouTube से ही किसी की वीडियो उठाई, कोई एडिट वगैरह कुछ भी नहीं किया, ठीक है, और उसके बाद आपने उसको अपलोड कर दिया, तो आपका चैनल शैडो बैन हो जाएगा। उसके बाद आपने चैनल की सेटिंग्स के अंदर
professional, unhurried, no sirens, no dramatic lights, just uniforms, notebooks, and measured footsteps that echoed on the wet pavement outside. The officer's eyes scanned the clubhouse, registering the men, the leather, the patches, and finally, the two children who clung together like fragile statues. Next came the social worker, clipboard in hand, and face calm but alert. Every step she took seemed deliberate, like she was prepared to measure the danger in the room with nothing more than her eyes. And then the school principal arrived. His usually composed posture was now stiff, rigid as a board. He had seen trouble before, but nothing like this. Nothing that make the back
वीडियो डालने के बाद वो किसी मूवी की वीडियो होती है 3-4-5 घंटे की, वो डालने के बाद उसके ऊपर वो जो है ना वो ट्रैफिक भेजते हैं मुख्तलिफ मोबाइल से, ठीक है, उनके पास काफी ज्यादा डिवाइसेस होती हैं, वहां से वो जो है ना ट्रैफिक भेजते हैं।
Who had terrorized Eli and his sister, the source of every sleepless night, and whispered fear, was arrested without drama. No struggle, no shouting. At the end of one
चैनल के ऊपर आपको डॉलर्स तो ऑन हो जाएंगे, लेकिन वो डॉलर कभी भी विड्रॉ नहीं होंगे। ये भाई बात दोस्तों याद रखना है, वो डॉलर कभी भी विड्रॉ नहीं होंगे, क्योंकि वो डॉलर कभी इंक्रीज नहीं होंगे, आपका चैनल कभी ग्रो नहीं होगा। जब चैनल ग्रो नहीं होगा तो आपका चैनल उस चैनल पे काम करने का फायदा नहीं, सालों साल लगा लो उस चैनल के ऊपर काम करने का फायदा नहीं। अभी यूट्यूब की एक ऑफिशियल वेबसाइट थी 2024 में 12 अगस्त में, यूट्यूब ने आप अपने शैडो बैन चैनल का स्टेटस चेक कर सकते हैं, लेकिन यूट्यूब ने ये चीज भी खत्म कर दी है। अभी आप अपने शैडो बैन का स्टेटस चेक नहीं कर सकते, लेकिन मैं आपको अपना ओन मेथड बताऊंगा जिससे आप अपने चैनल का शैडो बैन चेक कर सकते हो कि आपका चैनल शैडो बैन तो नहीं है। उसके लिए आपको सिंपली अपने चैनल के ऊपर जाना होगा, जाकर अपने चैनल की सबसे लॉन्ग वीडियो की रीच में इंप्रेशंस को चेक करना है, और शॉर्ट वीडियो के आपने देखना है कि मेरी शॉर्ट जो है ना वो शॉर्ट फीड के अंदर सर्व हो रही है कि नहीं हो रही, ये चीजें आपने देखनी है। उसके बाद जो है ना एक और चीज मैं आपको बताना चाहूँगा कि आप है कि नहीं हो रही, ये चीजें आपने देखनी है। उसके बाद
planning through blinds in lazy stripes. Teachers moved about with routine urgency, unaware of the storm approaching. Then 6 bikers walked in, leather vests, boots silent on towel, patches heavy with stories no one in the office could know, eyes steady, faces calm. Each one carried authority without arrogance, presence without aggression. They stopped a few feet behind chairs where Eli and his sister sat swinging their legs nervously. The children froze for a moment, glances darting between each other and the imposing figures behind them. But the bikers said nothing. They didn't shout. They didn't lean threateningly, just presence. The silence itself was a state, a wall no bully could scale, a line drawn clearly, sharply, and irrevocably. Teachers paused mid-step, hands hovering over paper. Office staff pressed their hands to counter, unsure if they should intervene or if intervention was already in motion. And the bullies, they didn't arrive this time. They didn't need to. Rumors spread faster than courage, and whispers carried the message. These children were no longer alone. From that day forward, the bullying stopped, quietly at first, then decisively. Teachers began escorting Ellie's sister to class themselves. Always one stick with jeers, now held only cautious, respectful whisper. And for the first time, Eli felt the weight of the whip slightly in his favor. The town began to talk slowly. People whispered a different story, not one of fear, but one of unexpected guardianship, of loyalty that didn't require blood tie. The moment went viral, not online, but in every word carried from office to the classroom, home to home. Children protected by those the world feared most. Dot and Eli, sitting on that small chair with his sister clutching his sleeve, felt a strange new sensation. Safety, real safety, the kind you could taste like warm rain on concrete, steady and sure. For the first time in days, he lifted his head, looked at the steady faces behind him, and let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, the world could be on his side. Change doesn't happen all at once. It sneaks in quietly in places too ordinary to notice at first. In gestures that seem small but carry weight heavy enough to reshape life. It starts with rides to school. Eli sits perched on the back of a motorcycle, helmet too big for his head, the wind slicing past him sharp and cold. The girl clings to him, small and silent, as Mark is careful and steady, guides the bike down slick streets. Engines roar, hiss, but somehow, for the first time, Eli feels a pulse of safety in the chaos. The ride itself becomes a ritual, a marker of days passing, a bridge between fear and normalcy. It happens in math homework done at a grease-stained table. The clubhouse has become a second home, not because it's been sanitized or safe in the way a house might be, but because people show up. Marcus leans over Ellie's shoulder, tracing a triangle with a thick finger, murmuring, "Try it this way." Someone else quietly folds clean sheets, then pauses, glances at the children, and sets them and breathe. Lessons are small, numbers on paper, but each correct answer builds confidence. Each struggle shared between bikers and child slowly fills the emptiness left by neglect. It happens when Mark is quit drinking after 20 years. The first time Eli notices, he's fixing a small dent in a motorcycle tank. Marcus's hand shakes slightly, not from guilt, but habit. The old rhythm of reaching for a bottle is no longer there. Eli watches from a corner, unsure whether to comment. Then Marcus mutters, more to himself than anyone. Someone's watching now. He leaves the bottle untouched. A small act, invisible the most monumental in its meaning. It happens in the silent victories of everyday life. Eli learns to sleep through the night, no longer flinching at every creak of the house, no longer curling into himself when shadows fall. His sister's small body relaxes under blankets, no longer startled by raised voices, no longer gripping his hoodie as if the world might snatch him away. They discover normalcy in fragments, breakfast without chaos, laughter that isn't for quiet walks where neither needs to brace for impact. It happens in subtle glances and unspoken rule. A biker nudges the girl gently to the front of a line, letting her take a small victory. Another adjusts Ellie's collar, straightening him just enough to show pride. Silence becomes a language, one that speaks louder than words, louder than threats, louder than any fear that had followed them to the clubhouse that night. It happened when trust grows like a stubborn seed, Eli begins to speak, not just words about school or homework, but about thoughts, ideas, questions he had buried beneath were. Marcus listens, grave listens. Even the men who were once distant shadows in the background start to care, not out of obligation, but because showing up has meaning now. Their presence becomes the scaffold on which Eli and his sister rebuild what had been broken. Days bleed into weeks, weeks into months. 1 year becomes 2, becomes 3. In that time, small triumphs accumulate into a quiet transformation. The girl learns to run through hallways without fear. Ellie's laughter, once rare and cautious, comes easier, lingering longer. Bikers once defined by toughness begin to show tenderness, patience, restraint. They are not perfect, but they are present. And presence, Eli learns, is stronger than any shield he ever imagined. The world outside keeps moving, indifferent to the slow, painstaking changes inside the walls of the clubhouse. But inside, the transformation is profound, almost invisible, yet undeniable. The children grow, the men grow, the wounds, once raw and bleeding, begin to scab over. Change doesn't happen all at once. It happens here, in small slices of ordinary life made extraordinary by the presence of people who refuse to walk away. And when Eli looks at the girl laughing at a spilled cereal bowl, at Marcus smiling faintly as he cleans the mess, at Grave quietly watching from the doorway, he understands that the slow passage of time has been enough. That safety, trust, and family are built not in a single heroic act, but in the quiet persistence of showing up again and again and again. At the courthouse, Eli stands taller now. His clean shirt is neatly tucked, sleeves rolled once at the wrist, shoes shined enough to see faint reflections of the polished floor beneath him. His hands, once clenched with fear or bruised from instinctive defense, are steady at his sides. Every muscle in his small frame hums with quiet confidence. The courtroom is silent, the air thick with anticipation. The judge, a woman with kind eyes and years of experience reading the weight of human life, leans forward slightly. Papers shuffle. A pen clicks softly. "Do you understand what adoption means, Eli?" she asks. Eli nods. It's a small gesture, but in it lies the entirety of his journey. The fear, the running, the nights spent clutching his sister, the hours spent in the warmth, quiet defiance of the bikers who had shown up when no one else would. He nods, but the nod carries more than understanding. It carries trust, hard won, and deeply rooted. He glances briefly at the back of the courtroom where Marcus, Grave, and the other bikers sit quiet. Patch is muted under long coat, faces solemn but proud. They don't shift, they don't whisper, they are present. And their presence, unwavering, has been a shield longer than anyone has realized. The judge waits a moment, letting Eli collect himself, and then he speaks. Family isn't who you're born to. He says, the courtroom is still. No one breathes loudly. Every ear leans forward. It's who answers the door. When it's midnight, you're scared. The words hang in the air, simple, sharp, and undeniable. The memory of that night, the rain, the split eyebrow, the barefoot sister clinging to him, the biker standing quietly behind him floods the room without a single visual. Every listener can feel it. Eli takes the breath. His sister, small and quiet in the witness seat beside him, looks up and squeezes his hand. She doesn't speak, but her eyes say everything she cannot. Relief, safety, trust, love. Marcus leans slightly forward, jaw tight. His lip press into a thin line, but the faint twitch at the corner of his mouth betrays him. Graves sits straighter in his chair, chin lifted, a single gray streak of hair falling over his brow. He doesn't wipe his eyes. He doesn't need to, because in Ellie's words, in the room's absolute stillness, all the gratitude, all the love, all the fear, all the protection has already been expressed. The judge smiles softly, eyes glistening. Do you have anything else to say, Eli? She asks gently. Eli glances around the room once more at his sister, safe and smiling faintly, at the bikers, unflinching and steady. He speaks again, voice low but strong. Some people think family is just a word on paper. He says, but it isn't. Family is the people who show up, even when it's hard, even when it's scary, even at midnight. The words ripple outward, filling the space more fully than any official statement could. And for the first time in his life, Eli feels whole. His sister leans against him. He wraps an arm around her shoulder now, because he has to protect her from immediate danger. But because the habit has become natural, a mark of the love that grew in the cracks of fear and neglect outside the courthouse, a quiet crowd has gathered. Some whisper about the bikers, some about the courage of the children, but no one rushes in to interrupt. The world, at least for a moment, honors the gravity and the transformation. Dr. Grave finally exhales. Slow and deep, the other bikers shift slightly, each in their own way, acknowledging the triumph. They had shown up. They had kept their promise. They had been the family Eli needed. Eli steps down from the witness stand and with his sister at his side. He looks back once, long enough to cast the eyes of Marcus Grave and the other, and in that silent glance, he says more than words could. Thank you. I will never forget. And now I understand what it truly means to belong. For the first time, the tears that had been buried for years do not feel shameful. They are quiet, cathartic, and full of relief. The world outside the courthouse has not changed completely, but Eli has, and through him, so has everyone who showed up when it mattered most. At graduation, Eli stands at the edge of the stage, the tassel on his cap swinging slightly with the rhythm of his movement. The auditorium is filled with families, teachers, classmates, and a handful of familiar faces on the back mark is Grave, and the other bikers who had quietly made themselves part of his world. Their presence is understated but commanding, a reminder that family isn't always conventional. On his finger is a small silver ring, polished, simple, yet heavy with meaning. Engraved on its inside is a single word, show up dot. It's not a patch, not a flashy medal, not even a promise. It is a reminder, a symbol of the nights he feared he'd be alone, of the rain-slick